We're finding out about the explosion in knowledge about mindfulness and meditation, and how stress reduction is now being proven by technology to work and to rewire the brain. And Suzanne, first of all, how many different techniques are there out there now?
You know, I couldn't begin to count them. If you think about every contemplative lineage with their own tradition, and then teachers that have taken those foundational teachings and created their own thing on it. It's everything from, the Catholic tradition around reciting prayer and singing psalms, to the Buddhist tradition for discipline and mental training. And I mean, it's the gamut is
one size does not fit all. Can you give us three that you feel you have taken and weaved into the fabric of what you're now doing?
Yeah,
just
there are
limited to three.
Three buckets that I pull from that I think are really powerful. The first would be the bucket of mind-body connection that comes from the world of yoga. If you happen to be a kinesthetic learner, it's a direct access. Mindfulness.
What is kinesthetic learner?
I've always said, if I can feel it, I believe it. If I can feel it, I get it.
Gotcha.
That's a kinesthetic learner.
Okay.
And for myself, that was a great way to go. You can read about mindfulness all day long, but it is an experiential practice. And for me, experiencing that through the body was very helpful. Integrative restoration is one example
you need to feel it.
Of that kind of a somatic practice. The other bucket, let me back up. So that somatic mind-body connection work, either if you're wired to experience that way, it's a mode of learning that you might enjoy, or if you have a chronic clinical condition where learning to pay attention to physical sensation is going to help you better monitor that condition, that would be the bucket that I would.
And that's where you actually came from, that with your background, your history. Okay.
Which I found is great to help people connect with how they feel and better monitor for feeling better, which is one kind of learning.
Okay.
The other big bucket that I really appreciate is a Vipassana meditation technique.
Say the word again.
Vipassana, Vipassana.
Okay.
It's an Asian rooted technique where they do counting and just simple breath counting.
Okay.
Sounds easy, you know how to breathe, you know how to count to 10.
You're mentally counting.
Yep. All you do is you count inhales and exhales from 1 to 10 and 10 to 1, 1 to 10 and 10 to 1. But what happens is your brain's neural default mode will take you off on a vacation somewhere. You'll get to the number 2 and realize you've lost count, or you get to the number 42 and realize you've been somewhere else. So that particular practice is incredibly helpful for cultivating sustained attention and capacity to focus in that multitasking work environment that we talked about.
Okay.
The third bucket that really resonates with me now, and I think you'll hear more about, has to do with the cultivation of compassion. We talked a little bit about Richie Davidson's work around the monks and the fMRIs. We know that thoughts around calm, contentment, compassion, kindness actually change the human brain, and our brains are evolutionarily predisposed to grow in that way. I would also suggest that as a civilization and as a planet, we're not going to survive unless we reconnect with each other and our own motivations from a heartfelt place.
Well, that community feel is what got us to this part in our civilization, and if we end up isolating, we're going backward rather than forward. And part of it is the ability to prove that when you're with other people and when you're working together on a project and when you're giving, that giving is going to affect your brain's health in a way that's just barely being understood, whether it's the neurochemicals that are squirted out when you do something that is really kind with no motive that's going to benefit you. And I always say it does benefit you because you get that squirt.
Halo effect.
You get that halo effect, but you also get something that can be measured now, and that's that your brain is healthier. And the person who you help has a different type of a feel, but it's another one that's two people or a group of people helping.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've been measuring the physical benefits of that. For example, I remember some research I was exposed to out of the Osher Institute around AIDS patients in the 1970s and their capacity to thrive,
Okay.
which was directly connected to that sense of social connection and heartfelt connection. Same thing with Brene Brown's work around emotional vulnerability and authenticity as a key driver for thrive. But what we're understanding now, based on quantum physics and the latest research around energy, is that there's something that's going on below the physical there.
We
When
just can't
connect
measure it yet.
yet. Well, and part of what HeartMath does is measure the coherence of the neural networks around the heart. So we're beginning to, but we're also just beginning to understand the whole physiology that happens with intentional compassion. It changes the way the brain works, it changes the chemicals in the body, it changes our capacity to heal. And I think it's the only choice we have in terms of coming together as a species.
Well, and if the change in the structure is a positive change over time, and enough people are doing that same type of positive change, there's a bright future for your field to become a medical go-to, especially in the field of aging, where isolation is fatal. And that I take that back to Andrew Weil, who often will talk about that, and the studies out of Chicago with Cassiopeia and loneliness being equal or more risky than heavy smoking or obesity, the feeling of loneliness. And when someone who is feeling lonely, whether perceived or actual, can really be the death of a brain and shorten the life expectancy, your field would be a safe island that if it reached on a daily or regular basis, might be that intervention that makes all the difference in life.
Well, it's interesting. I know that so much of the funding around caring for the elderly now is being invested in bringing devices into the home, right? So that person doesn't ever have to leave. And
The monitoring devices.
Makes my heart sad, because you're right, that's not what we need. I think we need intentional connection, and whether or not that comes through a program offering in a shared housing or I prefer to think completely outside the box in terms of small intentional communities that are coming together like a pocket neighborhood.
Just co-housing or a village concept.
Well, like the Bridge Meadows concept, even with multi-generational, there's something that our hearts and our souls need, in particular as we age. And I think that there's real beauty in offering the wisdom that comes with age and the way the brain changes with age, and offering that back into a younger multi-generational housing.
And that doesn't happen until you actually have people physically working with each other, especially over time.
Well, although I gotta say, I'm not gonna wait until I'm there. I'm prepping my brain now, because mindfulness training at any age will help you to be more emotionally resilient, to have an inner sense of contentment and ease no matter what goes on outside. And we know that the one thing that's not gonna change is change. So I'd rather, work on my capacity to roll with it now than wait until I...
So you're an elder in training, right?
Well, and that's something about spending a year in a wheelchair and dealing with chronic pain. I have a real appreciation for my physical capacity now, and a real understanding of the planning that I want to do so that I'm comfortable and connected and supported in my old age.
All right. And we're going to get into how does mindfulness and the meditation techniques that you have gathered together, how does that fit into an older person's future, an elder? So we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Perfect.
Okay.